The night sky broke open like a wound. A ball of fire streaked across the stars and crashed into the silent valley below. The explosion lit the fields for miles, turning night into burning daylight for just a moment. The ground shook, birds screamed into the air, and then came silence. Heavy, waiting silence. Ethan Hale saw it happen from his small farmhouse on the edge of the forest. He was a quiet man, living alone with the ghosts of old wars and broken dreams. But when that fire fell, something inside him stirred. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the habit of a man who had seen too many people fall and not helped soon enough. He grabbed his flashlight, pulled on his coat, and stepped into the cold night. The air smelled of smoke and wet soil. As he walked closer to the crash site, he could feel the heat before he saw the crater. When he reached it, the earth was torn open, blackened, steaming, and still glowing faintly blue. In the center, half buried in the dirt, was something that did not belong on Earth. A shape of metal, smooth and curved, unlike any aircraft he had ever seen. Sparks flickered across its surface. Ethan's heart pounded. He had read stories about UFOs before, but standing there seeing it, it was no story. Then he heard a sound, a soft cry, weak, broken, almost human. He moved closer, stepping over the hot soil. There, lying a few feet away from the wreck, was a figure, small, fragile, trembling. A woman, or at least something that looked like one. Her skin was pale silver, faintly glowing like moonlight on water. Her hair shimmered like strands of light. And her eyes, when she opened them, were violet and full of pain. She tried to move but gasped, clutching her side. Ethan froze. His mind screamed that this was impossible, but his heart saw only someone who was hurt. He knelt beside her. Hey, it's okay," he said softly. His voice shook, but he kept talking, trying to sound calm. "You're going to be all right." She looked at him, confused. Her lips moved, and a sound came out. Soft, musical, a language he could not understand. Then she coughed, and silvery blood slipped from the corner of her mouth. Ethan panicked. No, stay still." He took off his coat and gently wrapped it around her. The fabric looked dull against her glowing skin. She trembled, her breath shallow and quick. Behind them, the strange ship gave a low hum, then a spark. Ethan turned. One of the metal plates was beginning to melt, glowing from the inside. Whatever power had been in it was dying, or exploding. He didn't think. He just acted. He lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body warm but fragile, like holding a flame that could vanish if he wasn't careful. As he climbed out of the crater, the wreck behind them gave one last pulse of blue light, and then imploded silently, folding in on itself until nothing was left but a cloud of dust. By the time Ethan reached his farmhouse, he was shaking from exhaustion. He laid her gently on the wooden table and switched on a lamp. The light flickered over her body, the burned fabric of her strange suit, the marks glowing faintly along her arms, and the wound on her side that pulsed with dim light, as if it were alive. Ethan opened his old first aid box with trembling hands. "I'm not a doctor," he muttered, "but I'll try." When he touched the edge of the wound, she gasped and her hand caught his wrist. Her strength surprised him. Her eyes locked on his, filled with fear, pain, and something like confusion. For a moment, time froze. Then she slowly released him, letting him work. He cleaned the wound carefully, wrapped it with gauze, and prayed she wouldn't fade away before morning. When he finally stepped back, her breathing had steadied. She turned her head slightly and looked at him. Her voice was faint, broken, but he understood her words. "Why?" "Help me?" Ethan blinked. She had spoken in English. Or maybe something had changed in the way he heard her. He didn't know. He sat down beside her and said quietly, "Because you needed it." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The room was filled with soft light and the distant sound of wind outside. The world felt very small. Just a human and an alien alone in a farmhouse, both strangers under the same sky. And in that fragile moment, Something beautiful began, a story not of fear, but of kindness. The morning light crept slowly through the cracks of the old farmhouse. Ethan woke up on the chair beside the table, his neck stiff and his mind heavy with half-remembered dreams. For a moment he thought last night had been some strange nightmare. The crash, the light, the wounded woman. But then he turned his head. She was still there. The alien woman lay on his table, wrapped in his coat, breathing softly. The faint glow under her skin was weaker now, but still visible, like fire under ice. Her silver hair had fallen over her face, and for a brief second she looked almost peaceful, almost human. Ethan stood quietly, not wanting to wake her. He poured himself a cup of water and looked out the window. The crater in the distance was gone, only scorched earth and smoke left behind. Whatever her ship had been, it was gone, erased from the world. He turned back toward her. She was awake. Her violet eyes were open, calm yet watchful. When their eyes met, Ethan froze. He tried to speak but stopped when she flinched and tried to sit up. Pain crossed her face instantly and she let out a small cry, holding her side. "Don't move," Ethan said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're still hurt. You need rest." She stared at him, breathing hard, eyes darting around the room. The wooden walls, the tools, the light from the window. Everything was strange to her. Her hand brushed over the table as if trying to understand what kind of place she was in. I found you," Ethan said softly. "You crashed. I brought you here." She tilted her head, trying to understand. Her lips moved and she spoke in that strange language again, soft, flowing like a song. He shook his head helplessly. "I don't understand you," he said, "but I'll try to help, okay?" She looked confused. Then she closed her eyes, her fingers brushing over her temple. For a few seconds, a faint light shimmered across her skin. Ethan stepped back, startled. When she opened her eyes again, she spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "Human. You help me." Ethan blinked in surprise. "You can speak English now?" Her brow furrowed as she searched for the right words. "Learn from your mind, just a little." Ethan didn't know what to say. She had looked into his mind? The thought sent a chill down his spine, but when he looked at her again, he saw only exhaustion and pain. "Yes," he said finally, "I helped you. You were hurt. That's what people do." She seemed to think about that. Her eyes softened, though her face still showed confusion. "People help?" she repeated slowly, as if the word itself was strange. "Yeah," Ethan said, sitting on the edge of the table. "Well, some of us do." For a while, silence filled the room. Only the sound of the wind outside and the ticking of the old clock broke it. The alien woman watched him carefully. The way he breathed, the way his hands moved, the warmth in his voice. Then she whispered, "My name." "Layara," Ethan smiled a little. "Layara," he repeated. "That's a beautiful name." She hesitated, then asked, "You, name?" "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Hale." "Ethan," she said slowly, testing the sound. It came out soft, almost musical. For the first time, Ethan laughed. Close enough, but the moment didn't last. Layara's eyes suddenly darkened. She turned toward the window, her body tense. "They will come," she said. Ethan frowned. "Who?" "My kind," she whispered. "They will not let me live if they find me here."
"They will not let you live."
"For helping." Her voice broke slightly on that last word. Ethan felt a knot form in his chest. "Why would they hurt you?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. She just stared at the light outside, eyes full of fear and sorrow. Ethan stepped closer. "Then we'll hide you," he said simply. "No one will find you here." Liara looked at him. This strange man, this fragile creature from a violent world who had chosen kindness when every reason said to run. "You do not fear me," she said softly. Ethan smiled, tired but sincere. "You were the one who fell out of the sky. I think you've had enough fear for both of us." Something changed in her expression, a small flicker of warmth behind the sadness. For the first time, she didn't look like a soldier or an alien. She looked like someone lost, holding on to hope. Ethan handed her a glass of water. She took it carefully, her hand trembling. When she drank, her eyes met his again. And in that silent exchange, a fragile bond began to form. Outside, the morning sun rose over the valley, casting golden light over the broken world. And inside that small farmhouse, a wounded alien woman and a lonely human began to understand each other, not with words, but with something deeper, something human. 2 days passed. The farmhouse had grown quiet again, but not empty. Ethan moved through it softly, careful not to make too much noise. Liara spent most of her time resting on the couch near the window, her body still weak, her wound slowly healing. The faint glow under her skin had faded, though sometimes in the dark, he could still see tiny lines of light moving like rivers beneath her skin. Ethan had never thought he'd share his home with something from the stars, but now when he saw her sitting silently watching the sunrise, she didn't seem like an alien to him. She seemed like someone broken, someone far from home. That morning, he brought her a bowl of soup. "It's not much," he said awkwardly, "but it'll help you get your strength back." Liara looked at the bowl curiously. She lifted the spoon with slow hands, tasting it carefully. Then her lips curved slightly, her first small smile. "Warm," she said softly. "Strange taste, but warm." Ethan chuckled. That's how human food usually is, unstrange but warm. They shared a quiet laugh, and for a moment it felt almost normal. But as the hours passed, Ethan began to notice something different in her eyes. A shadow. She kept looking at the sky through the window, tense, as if she expected something to appear at any moment. Finally he asked, "You said your people might come. Who are they? Why would they hurt you?" Liara's expression changed. Her smile faded and her shoulders stiffened. She turned away, her fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. For a long time she didn't speak. When she did, her voice was soft but filled with pain. "My people, the Zarian, we come from far beyond your stars. We are not explorers anymore. We are conquerors." Ethan frowned. "Conquerors?" She nodded slowly. "Long ago we lost something. Something inside us. We learned to rule with fear. We burn worlds. Take what we want, no mercy, no kindness." She looked down at her hands, glowing faintly in the morning light. "I was a soldier in that war." Ethan stared at her, unsure what to say. She didn't look like a soldier. She looked tired, broken. "So, you were sent here?" he asked quietly. Her lips trembled. "No, I ran." That word hung in the air like a blade. "I saw too much," she whispered. "Too many lives lost. Too many cries silenced. I could not fight anymore. I took a ship and escaped. But they found me. They chased me across the void. My ship broke when I entered your sky, and then you found me." Her voice cracked. She turned her face away, but Ethan could see tears glimmering in her violet eyes. "If they find me again," she said, "they will kill me. And you too for helping." Ethan leaned against the wall, trying to process her words. He had seen war too long ago. Men turning on each other for reasons no one remembered. He knew that kind of pain, the way it changed people. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you," he said. Liara looked at him, shocked. "You would die for this?" "I didn't say anything about dying," he said quietly. "I said hiding. And I'm good at that." For the first time she laughed, a soft musical sound that filled the room. It was short, but it carried warmth he hadn't heard before. She looked at him, her eyes shining. "You are strange, Ethan Hale." "I get that a lot," he said with a small grin. But inside, something was changing between them. Something quiet, something unspoken. The fear that once sat between them began to fade, replaced by trust. Liara began to talk more, teaching him a few words from her language. Ethan, in turn, told her about Earth, about oceans and forests, about music, about laughter. She listened with wide eyes, as if every story was a treasure. Yet every night, she still looked up at the stars with worry in her gaze. On the third night, Ethan found her outside, standing barefoot in the grass, her silver hair catching the moonlight. The air was cold, but she didn't seem to notice. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. Liara didn't turn. "I can feel them," she said. "Out there, searching." Ethan followed her gaze. The stars looked peaceful to him, but to her they must have been full of ghosts. "I won't let them take you," he said. His voice was quiet, but his eyes were steady. She looked at him finally. This human, this fragile being with no weapon, no power, and yet a heart strong enough to stand against the unknown. "Why?" she asked again, her voice breaking. "Why do you care?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Because someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it," he said softly, "and it changed everything." Liara's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't hide them. She took a step closer, whispering, "Then maybe there is still hope left in the stars." The night wind moved around them, carrying the faint hum of something distant. Engines, perhaps, searching. But for that moment under the quiet sky there was peace, a human and an alien standing together. Two broken souls finding light in the dark. The next night came with a strange silence. The stars were brighter than before, but Ethan could feel something different in the air. A pressure, like the world itself was holding its breath. Even the wind had stopped whispering through the trees. Liara sat by the window, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She had barely spoken all day. Ethan could see the fear hidden behind her calm face. Every few minutes she would glance up at the sky, her fingers tightening around the blanket. He placed a mug of tea beside her. "You haven't eaten anything since morning," he said softly. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant. "They are close now." Ethan's heart sank. "You mean your people?" Liara nodded slowly. "Their ships have reached your system. They will scan for my signal soon. If they find the wreck, if they find me—" She stopped, her hands trembling. "They will destroy everything to erase me." Ethan sat down beside her. "You're safe here. They won't find you." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. He had seen enough in her eyes to know what her kind could do. If they were as powerful as she said, hiding might not be enough. He looked at her again, her silver hair glowing in the lamplight. "Liara, if they come here, what will they do to Earth?" She looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "If they think your world helped me, they will burn it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ticking clock on the wall was the only sound. Ethan's chest felt tight. He thought about the towns nearby, about people who had no idea that something terrible might be heading toward them. Liara saw the pain in his face. "You should leave," she whispered. "Go far away. Forget me." Ethan laughed quietly, though there was no joy in it. "I can't do that." "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "They will kill you." He looked at her, calm but firm. "Maybe, but I'm not leaving you." Liara's lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. She saw the determination in his eyes, the same fire that had once burned in her when she still believed in something good. She turned away, hiding her tears. "Humans are strange," she whispered. "Yeah," Ethan said with a small smile. "We do stupid things for people we care about." Outside, the wind began to move again. The night grew colder. Liara stood and walked outside, her bare feet touching the cold grass. Ethan followed her, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. The sky above them shimmered faintly, and for a moment Ethan saw something, faint lights moving between the stars. Liara closed her eyes. "They are searching. I can feel their signal. It reaches for me." Ethan's mind raced. "Then we have to block it. Hide your signal somehow." Liara shook her head. "My body carries a tracer. It connects me to the Zarian network. It cannot be removed easily." Ethan looked around, thinking hard. Maybe not removed, but maybe buried. "You said your ship had power systems? What if I can use something from it?" Wires, metal, anything, to shield the signal. Liara's eyes widened slightly. You understand technology? I used to, he said simply. Worked with communication systems before I came here. Maybe I can do something. For the first time that night, hope flickered in her expression. If we can block it, they may pass without finding me. They worked through the night. Ethan brought out his old tools, pieces of copper wire magnets and an old battery generator. Liara guided him with quiet instructions, her fingers tracing strange patterns in the air to show how her energy worked. Together they built a rough device, half machine, half something that pulsed with her faint power. When it was finished, Liara placed her hand on it. Her skin glowed softly and the device hummed. A wave of faint blue light rippled through the room. It's done, she whispered. They won't sense me now. Ethan exhaled in relief. Good, then you're safe. Liara looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. You risk your life for someone you barely know. Why? Ethan smiled gently. Maybe because you needed someone to believe in you. Tears filled her eyes. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she took his hand, her fingers trembling but warm. Thank you, Ethan Hale, you have given me more than safety. You have given me. Faith outside, thunder rolled across the valley, distant like the growl of ships breaking through clouds. Ethan looked up, his jaw tightening. They're close, he said. Liara nodded, her voice steady but sad. The storm has come. He squeezed her hand. Then we'll face it together. And in that small farmhouse under a sky trembling with light, a human and an alien stood side by side, fragile, defiant, and unbroken. The world above them was ready for war. But below, something far stronger had already begun, the bond between two hearts that refused to surrender. The sky turned red before dawn. Ethan had barely slept. All night he had listened to the low hum of the device they built, the strange blue machine that now sat in the center of his farmhouse, shielding Liara from the Zarian scanners. But even with it running, he could feel something wrong in the air. The wind carried a strange vibration, deep, powerful, unnatural. When he stepped outside, he saw flashes of light far above the clouds, silent but fierce, like lightning that refused to fade. Liara followed him to the door, her face pale. They are here, she whispered. Their ships have entered your skies. Ethan looked at her, his jaw tightening.
Can they find you?
She shook her head slowly. Not yet. The shield hides my signal, but it will not last forever. They will search. They always search. Ethan turned his eyes to the horizon. Then we need to be ready. He spent the morning gathering what he could, food, water, his old radio, anything useful. Liara watched him in silence, her expression filled with something between worry and admiration. Humans were strange to her, fragile bodies, short lives. Yet Ethan carried himself with a quiet strength she had never seen even among her own warriors. When he caught her staring, he smiled. Don't worry, I'm not planning to fight your whole army. Just trying to be prepared, she gave a faint smile. You speak as if you could face them alone. Ethan shrugged. Maybe I can't win, but I won't let them take you without trying. Her eyes softened, but her heart hurt at his words. She had seen entire worlds burned by the Zarian. No human could fight them, not even 1,000. Yet Ethan spoke with such calm certainty that for the first time, she began to hope again. As the sun began to fade behind gray clouds, the first sign of them appeared. A dark shadow moving across the sky. It wasn't a cloud. It was something vast, smooth and metallic, gliding silently like a predator above the earth. Liara gasped. That is a scout vessel. They are scanning this region. Ethan's heart pounded. Then we stay quiet. They turned off all lights. The farmhouse fell into darkness. Only the faint hum of the shielding device broke the silence. Ethan and Liara sat close together on the floor, their shoulders touching as they waited. A beam of pale light swept across the fields outside, slow, searching. It passed over the barn, the trees, and then stopped near the house. Liara held her breath. Her body tensed, the glow under her skin flickering as fear pulsed through her veins. Ethan reached out and took her hand. His grip was firm and steady. She looked at him, her eyes wide, and for a moment the fear faded. The beam lingered for several seconds, then moved on. Liara exhaled shakily. They didn't see us. Ethan smiled faintly. Told you we'd manage, but his smile didn't last. Outside, a deeper rumble echoed across the valley. Thunder mixed with something mechanical. When he stepped to the window, he saw 3 more shadows descending through the clouds. Liara stood beside him, whispering, "Those are hunters. They track energy signatures. They will not leave until they find me." Ethan's mind raced. "Then we have to lead them away from here." "What?" she said sharply. "No, you cannot." But he was already moving, grabbing his coat and the small generator that powered the shielding device. "If I take this and run, they'll follow the signal. You'll stay hidden. When they go after me, you destroy this thing and disappear. They'll think I was the only one." Liara's voice trembled. "Ethan, you don't understand." "They will kill you." He stopped at the door and looked at her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were full of warmth. "Maybe, but if it means you live, it's worth it." Tears filled her violet eyes. "Why do you do this?" He smiled sadly. "Because someone has to show them what it means to be human." Liara stepped forward, gripping his hand. "If you die, I die too." Ethan shook his head. "No, you live. That's how this ends." For a moment, neither spoke. Only their breathing filled the quiet room. Then slowly she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. A soft light spread from her skin, surrounding them both. Her voice was a whisper. "Then may your stars guide you, Ethan Hale." He left before dawn. The sky above was alive with light, silent, endless, and cold. He ran across the field, carrying the humming device in his hands. Behind him, Liara watched from the window. Tears streaking down her cheeks, the glow of her body flickering like a dying flame. Far above, the Zarian hunters changed direction, following the signal that now moved away from the farmhouse. Ethan didn't look back. He just kept running into the mist, into the storm, into whatever came next. And for the first time in her life, Liara prayed, and not to her gods, not to the stars, but for a human. The night was heavy with mist and fear. Ethan ran through the tall grass, the cold air biting his skin. The shielding device hummed in his arms, its blue light flickering weakly. He knew the Zarian scanners would see it. That was the point. He wanted them to follow him, to think he was the target. Behind him, far in the distance, the farmhouse grew smaller and smaller until it vanished into the fog. He didn't let himself look back. If he did, he might lose his courage. High above, a beam of light cut through the clouds, a Zarian ship searching, scanning, hunting. The deep sound of its engines shook the ground. Ethan stumbled but kept moving, forcing his legs to go faster. "Come on," he muttered to himself. "Come get me." Far away, Liara watched from the farmhouse window. She could see the glow moving across the fields, fading slowly into the darkness. Her heart screamed for him to return, but she knew he wouldn't. Ethan had made his choice, and to protect her even if it meant his death. She fell to her knees, trembling, her breath shallow. "Foolish human," she whispered, tears running down her face. "Why would you do this for me?" But in her heart she already knew the answer. Ethan reached the edge of the valley just as the first ship descended. It was massive, like a floating fortress, its hull made of black metal that reflected no light. The sound it made was deep, alive, like the growl of something ancient. A spotlight swept over him and he froze. The blue light of the shielding device was too bright to hide now. He raised it above his head and shouted, "Here! You want this? Come take it!" The beam stopped. A second later, a strange voice echoed from above, mechanical and cold. Human identified. "Surrender the beacon and prepare for assimilation." Ethan laughed, breathless. "Yeah, not happening." He threw the device onto a pile of rocks and stepped back. The ship descended lower, stirring the grass and dust around him. From its side, a hatch opened and 3 tall figures emerged. The Zarian hunters. Their armor shimmered like liquid glass and their eyes glowed with cruel intelligence. Ethan felt small standing before them, but he didn't move. He lifted a piece of metal pipe he had found earlier, holding it like a weapon. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The lead Zarian tilted its head. "You are fragile. Your resistance is meaningless," Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe. But sometimes meaning isn't the point." The hunters advanced, their steps silent but sure. Ethan swung the pipe at the first one, sparks flying as it struck armor harder than stone. Pain shot through his arms, but he didn't stop. He hit again and again until one of them knocked him to the ground. Blood filled his mouth, but he still grinned. "You're gonna have to try harder." They aimed their weapons, small, glowing blades that hissed with energy. But before they could strike, the shielding device began to pulse violently. Ethan's eyes widened. Oh, that's new. Liara had changed the settings before he left. He realized it too late. The machine wasn't just hiding her signal now. It was building energy, unstable and wild. The light grew brighter, shaking the ground. The Zarian stepped back, confused. Ethan looked at the device, then at the sky. "Guess this is it." He pulled a small metal pin from the generator's base and a safety lock. The light turned blinding. Back at the farmhouse, Liara saw the flash. It lit up the horizon like a second sun. Her scream tore through the quiet air as the explosion rippled across the valley, shaking everything. When the light faded, only smoke remained. The Zarian ship above flickered, its systems damaged by the surge of energy. It turned sharply, retreating into the clouds. Liara fell to the floor, clutching her chest. The bond between her and the shielding device was still active, and in that final pulse she had felt Ethan's heart stop. Her breath broke into sobs. "No, Ethan." She crawled to the door, her vision blurred by tears. The sky outside was gray and broken, the wind cold and sharp. In the distance, where the explosion had happened, there was nothing but fire and silence. She collapsed, trembling, whispering his name again and again. "Ethan, please!" But there was no answer. The next morning, the world was quiet. The storm had passed. Liara walked barefoot through the wet grass, her body weak, her soul heavier than it had ever been. She reached the place where the earth had burned black, and there, lying among the ashes, was Ethan's jacket. She picked it up with shaking hands. It was torn, scorched, but still warm. She pressed it to her chest and fell to her knees. Her voice cracked through her tears. "You said I should live. Then I will. I will live, Ethan Hale, and they will remember you." Above her, the sun began to rise, golden and soft, a new dawn over a broken field. For the first time, the alien woman understood what it meant to be human, and for the first time, the universe had learned what humanity's love could do. The wind was soft that morning. The fields were quiet again, touched by sunlight and peace. Liara stood alone, her silver eyes reflecting the empty sky. The ground where Ethan had fallen was now covered with wildflowers, small, white, fragile things that had grown overnight. She held his jacket close to her chest. It smelled of smoke and rain, but also of him, of kindness, of courage, of something no words could ever describe. For a long time she just stood there listening. Every sound of the breeze reminded her of his voice. Every heartbeat in her chest felt borrowed, as if she was still carrying a piece of him inside her. The Zarian ships had left Earth after the explosion. Their systems had been damaged by the surge, and their scanners had lost her signal completely. To them, the mission was over. They believed the fugitive was destroyed, but Liara knew the truth. A human had given his life to protect her, and because of him, she now lived. She looked up at the sky. "You told me to live," she whispered. "So I will. But I will not hide. I will tell them what you did." Her voice trembled, but her resolve was strong. She was not just a survivor now. She was a messenger. Over the next few days, Liara gathered the parts Ethan had used. The broken generator, the cracked shielding core, even the pieces of his old tools. She built something new, something small but powerful, a signal transmitter. It would send a message far beyond Earth's orbit. When it was ready, she stood before it, the morning sun shining behind her. She pressed her hand to the surface, and the machine came to life with a soft blue light. Her message began, "To any who hear this. This is Liara of the Zarian Exile Fleet. I speak not as a soldier nor as a scientist, but as one who has seen what we all forgot. I speak for a world you call primitive, a world that holds hearts stronger than our machines." Her voice shook, but she continued. "A human named Ethan Hale saved my life. He had no power, no weapon, no armor, only courage and kindness. He stood before our hunters unafraid and faced death so another could live. He showed me what we have lost and the meaning of compassion, of sacrifice, of love." The light on the transmitter brightened, sending her words into the stars. "If the Zarian hear this, know that I am not your enemy anymore. You can conquer planets, but you cannot conquer what lives in the hearts of humans. They are not weak. They are the fire that will outlast our cold empires." When the message was done, Liara knelt beside the transmitter and closed her eyes. A single tear fell on the dirt.
"He changed me,"
she whispered. "And one day he will change you too." The signal spread far beyond Earth, through satellites, through debris fields, through the emptiness between worlds. And somewhere deep in space, someone heard it. In the following months, strange things began to happen. Human scientists detected a faint alien transmission repeating across several frequencies. It wasn't hostile. It was a voice, calm, sad, and full of hope. They decoded it. It spoke of a man who gave his life for someone not of his kind. A man who chose love over fear. A man named Ethan Hale. When the story reached the human world, it spread like wildfire. People didn't care that it came from an alien. They only heard the message, and for the first time, humanity realized that their kindness had changed something far beyond their planet. But somewhere, deep in the stars, something greater was happening. Among the Zarian, the message reached hidden ears. Soldiers, workers, even leaders who had grown tired of endless conquest. They whispered the name of the human who had defied their ships. Some even began to question their war. Liara had started something no one could stop. Years later, she still lived quietly on Earth, near the same farmhouse where it all began. The world had moved on, but she never forgot. Each morning she would walk to the field and talk softly to the wind. "Good morning, Ethan," she would say, smiling through tears. "Your world is safe. Your people are stronger than you ever knew." Sometimes she would feel the wind brush against her hand, gentle, warm, almost like someone answering back. And in those moments, she knew he was still with her, not in body, but in spirit. The stars carried his story now, and every light in the sky reminded her of him. She looked up one last time, her voice a whisper of faith. "Wherever you are, they remember you. I remember you." The breeze carried her words into the golden horizon. And as the sun rose higher, a new dawn began, not just for Earth, not just for Liara, but for the galaxy that finally learned what a single human heart could mean. Because Ethan Hale was gone. But his kindness had become immortal.